All right, so I think we are good to go. We have a good number to start with. Others can join as and when they please. Everybody can come on camera. That just ensures better engagement. Also helps me gauge how much of what I'm saying is being understood. So please do come on camera if that's not a problem. Yeah. So to begin with, I formally welcome you all to this workshop, which is being organized by IDL in collaboration with SRCC Debating Society. All of you must have gotten to know about this from their platform or Instagram channels that we have for IDL. So this debating workshop will entail quite a lot of things, some of which have been shared on the WhatsApp group under the fold of agenda. So we will be discussing prevalent international formats that exist within the realm of debating in status quo. We will also be discussing the merit of the activity itself in getting you decent colleges or just helping you build profile wherever you want to go. And thereby just like some activities that help you self-evaluate, but also just help you gauge how much of it is known to you and how much is there for you to explore yet. So those are just things that we aspire to cover within this 1 hour. We hope to make this a very engaging hour for everybody present here. Just quickly, in terms of, again, I want to read this room. So how many of you are familiar with the concept of debating as such in whichever format? Like, give me a show of hands. Familiar as in you've just been to a competition, you need not have won. You need not have done anything peculiar in the field just yet. Just familiarity with debates. How many of you have that in whichever format? Give me a show of hands. No response would by default be considered no experience. So try being a little engaging here. Yes. Okay, Sneha, Kriti, Karthik, Ishani. Thank you, Kritika, Raghav. All right. So some of you have some experience, others might not be too familiar, which is all right. Whoever did raise their hands, though, could any two of or three of you please just talk to us about what your level of familiarity is like? Anvesha, Kanak. Can you, in that order, unmute yourself and please share your experience?
Debating is basically the deliberative and argumentative skills of someone, like how much quality arguments you present before someone and how much you are able to counter the argument that is being presented by someone else.
Okay, that's one definition. Fair enough. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Anvesha is unable to mute. Fair enough. No issues. All right. So, I mean, all of us will have different definitions of debating, but just like in terms of the formats that exist, etc., we're going to talk about it in depth shortly. But before that, just a little bit about the Indian Debating League and who we are. So, the Indian Debating League keeps organizing tournaments every now and then. This is mostly national level tournaments at prestigious universities. Like recently, we concluded a tournament at IIT Bhubaneswar. Before that, at IIT Chennai. So, and now we are having another tournament in IIT Delhi coming May. So we keep organizing tournaments, but the most prestigious of all the tournaments that we organize happens to be the Indian Debating League. There's a massive footfall from people across the country here, and the format is mostly WSDC, but we tap into various other internationally relevant formats as well and in different tournaments. So that's something that you can probably explore more on our Instagram channel. We're there on LinkedIn, YouTube, everywhere. So that's something for you to explore perhaps. But moving on in terms of just like the relevance of this activity in its entirety, because there's so many things that you can necessarily do as part of extracurricular. What is so peculiar about debating, which makes it something that is worth your time, right? So this is basically to give you a view on how important or how relevant debating can happen to be in the long term if you retrospectively look at your journey. There is this person, Yash Moitra, who you can see on the screen as well. They started with us with one of our tournaments called Frankenstein, which we hold annually. So it's also coming up in May. But they started from there, and through like this exploration of their acumen in debating and thereby developing a very rigid interest in the activity, they ended up debating in a lot of formats across tournaments and eventually landed themselves in like a decent Ivy League university. So they got like acceptance from Cornell's, KCL, UCLA, and whatnot. So this is to say that debating can actually help you, not just in terms of just being an outlet for you to opinionate on issues that are otherwise not so profusely talked about, but also in general, like building your profile, etc., just happens way more swiftly as compared to any other like activity that you might want to indulge in. Does someone have a question? Apparently not. Okay. Likewise, we had one of our teams break at Imperial College London this year, 2023. They won the silver finals. Shivansh Gupta, Danya Khan, exceptionally talented people, but again, people who invested a lot of time in the activity because it calls for that, but it's extremely rewarding at the end of the day. All right. In terms of like debating is just like a very expansive idea in and of itself, which means that it cannot be contained in like a one line long definition. It will always surpass that, which is why if more than one person would have like volunteered to talk about debating, we would have found like the diversity of opinions that exist on what is debating in and of itself, because of how, I mean, different people think differently about debates because of the formats that they come from. I think most of you must be familiar with the turncoat format because SRCC held its event in that format. So, and you happen to be from there, like that must have been your recent endeavor. In that case, turncoat format is like a very prevalent format. So most of your understanding about debates might be from there, which isn't like wrong as such, but it's definitely like not as well explored if you do not know the other formats as well. So if I were to talk about a couple of formats with you today, I definitely cannot give you an exhaustive list, but I am enlisting the formats which are the most relevant when it comes to international debating, or in terms of the tournaments that these Ivy Leagues organize annually, which formats they do it most in, right? So first of all is your World Schools Debating Championship. This format is where like the biggest tournament happens on a global level annually, for which 5 people are selected to be the representatives of the country within a team. So that is like like this is the most credible thing that you can do in your debating trajectory while you're in school. So WSDC is the format, which is basically 3 versus 3. So there are 5 people in a team, but only 3 participate as speakers. The rest of the 2 help you with case building, but they don't necessarily speak. So about the nitty-gritties, there's a lot to talk about it, but WSDC in general is a format which is used in this top-ranked global tournament, which is WSDC, which is called WSDC itself. The second tournament is British Parliamentary Debates. Again, very similar to WSDC because again, team format, a format that does not permit research, a format that does not allow you more than 15 minutes of prep time before you go into a debate. So the motion would be new to you. You wouldn't get any time to research. You get 15 minutes to prep on it, and then you deliver 7-minute long speeches. That's how the BP format works. But also it's 2 versus 2, which means there's only 2 people in each team in a British parliamentary debate. It's very similar to WSDC in terms of how you debate within the format, but the team configuration changes as the format changes. Again, there's a lot to unfold within each of these formats. I am only giving you the tip of the iceberg. On to the Asian parliamentary debates then. Asian parliamentary debates are a lot like WSDC because they would also entail 3 versus 3 for team configuration. Is the same kind of motions. You get 25 to 30 minutes of prep time. The only difference is perhaps that WSDC has 5 members, 2 of which only help you in case building, whereas APDs or Asian parliamentary debates have 3 members and all of them participate in both case building and speaking while the debate is on. There are other formats like public forum debates, public policy debates. These are mostly prevalent in the US and they are research based. So they are slightly different from BPD, which is British Parliamentary, Asian Parliamentary, APD, and WSDC, because the first 3 are not research oriented, they're logic oriented, and they don't permit research. The others probably do, They give you the motion or agenda way before the event actually starts. You have all the time in the world to accumulate as much data as you can. And then it's evidence based in the sense that adjudicators can also ask for a fact check from you, which cannot happen in the first three formats. And then Lincoln Douglas is again a format which is one versus one. You mostly debate on principles there like trust, sovereignty, uh, autonomy, independence, stuff like that. Very basic, abstract, but principles which are important and help run the society in a cohesive sense. Turncoat debates, of course, you're familiar. You go for and against both according to the timestamps that you're given. And turncoat format also has a lot of variations. And this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the most prominent formats. Before I go any further, though, and because I don't want to make this a one-way thing, any questions or comments are more than welcome. Are there any comments, questions?
Please repeat about the second last one.
Lincoln Douglas. So Lincoln Douglas is just basically a format which is one versus one, which means you don't practice this in a team mostly. And again, you're given a statement or a topic or a motion, call it whatever, and you are supposed to go be for or against it. But the kind of debates that you have within Lincoln Douglas are principle debates. Principle as in you don't talk about the economy, you don't talk about the material world, you talk about principles like autonomy, like uh, trust or reparation. These are principles. These are ideas that are not tangible but are equally important. All right. Harsh's question about turncoat format. The turncoat format is when you're given a topic. It could be given to you on the spot, or it could be given to you days prior to the event, depending on the organizing committee's decision. You go for the motion and against the motion, but you have to distribute the time you're allotted reasonably. This means that I'm given a motion. I will first speak for 2 minutes for the motion, and then after 2 minutes are over, I have to automatically switch and speak against the motion. So turncoat format gives you a holistic understanding, a 360 view on the topic, where you are your own foe because first you propose something and then you oppose it. I hope that clears both of your questions. Give me a thumbs up if it does. Otherwise, I'll repeat, I don't mind. All right. Thank you so much. Moving on. Now, this is where I will end being very preachy and prescriptive in what I have to say and how this workshop should like proceed. Now I want most of you guys to participate and engage in the activities that we are pursuing so that you can make the most of this session. Basically, what I intend to cover in this particular workshop is that I can't teach you every possible format under the sun which exists for you within which you might do exceptionally well in the future. What I can give you though is a window into how each of these formats work in the sense that what are the commonalities that bind these formats? What are the things that you can learn which are going to help you regardless of the format you choose to develop a debating career in? So I will give you very basic ideas about how to approach a motion, how not to commit any common mistakes that people mostly when they're starting out do, and then on to how rebuttals are done or how you configure your mindset before you go into debates about confidence, about like stage fear, any other inhibitions that you might have as just people who are starting out. I will be happy to answer questions if in between. You can just give me a show of hands while I'm speaking. All right. Approaching a motion, I'm not going to say anything before we do this quick activity, right? How many of you, I mean, what is it that you guys do the moment you're given a motion? So, like, if I give you a topic, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? What are you going to do with the motion in order to come up with a case on it? For example, this is a motion. This house will make votes public. Can at least 3 volunteers tell me how they are going to approach this motion if I were to give this to them and tell them that after 15 minutes, you have to present a speech on this? 3 volunteers. I'm not asking for a lot. Read the motion carefully and analyze the outcomes. Fair enough. Okay, thank you, Kritika. Others, put it in the chat or unmute yourself. It's okay. I mean, this is a very non-judgmental space for you to say whatever you want to. So read the motion carefully and analyze the outcomes. That sounds reasonable. Explain how we will do it. Karthik, could you elaborate? Like, how do you explain how you will do what? I'll wait for around a minute or two if you guys prefer typing it out in the chat. Look for the harms and benefits in the motion. Okay, that's some insight. Examine the direct effects. All right. Okay, I have some responses. We'll think about the stakeholders affected by motion and build the case around it. Okay, so apparently, Harsh, it appears that you know something about stakeholder analysis and you are familiar with the parliamentary format of debating to some extent. Enumerate about how the process of making the votes public would look like. All right, okay. So most of your comments make sense, but in terms of like approaching the motion, I'm just asking in general, is it that you automatically start thinking from your side, or do you ever give a thought to what the other side might say, and then you proceed to thinking about what you want to say from your side? Or is it always this linear trajectory of figuring out what you want to say and then leaving the rebuttals to the debate so that you'll deal with their case when it comes to you? You're not going to preemptively think about it. Status quo. Okay, we have some jargons coming in, which is good. So fair enough. I think different people have different approaches to how you are going to address emotion the moment you're given one. And even people who are serious practitioners and have some experience will have a different opinion on how you can most effectively approach emotion if you have only 15 minutes to think about all dimensions of it. But in general, what people mostly do is find what it is that this motion is about. And that's very vague for me to put it like that. But what I mean to say is that when you're given a motion, you probably think about the problem, as in what led to somebody setting this motion up in the first place. Like what might be the problem statement in the motion, which we are looking to solve on both sides of the house. So whenever we're debating, we are mostly trying to solve a problem and not on one side, on both the sides. This means that whenever I'm given a motion, I'm always thinking about the solution to a problem. So whenever I'm debating, I cannot debate on something or I can't propose something saying that I'm proposing it because I want the world to worsen through this. That makes no sense. You always propose something towards the amelioration of the societal conditions. This means that if this is a motion which you're given about how this house will make votes public, then there is a problem that you're trying to solve here. Can you guys quickly guess and put it in the chat or unmute yourself and tell me what the problem might be? Like it could be any political problem, but why do you think this motion was set in the first place? What's the agenda? What is the problem, underlying problem? I am
Implemented
going to give you
transparency
around.
in the administrative setup and to make the government accountable to people.
All right. Okay. So you're basically saying that the problem is opaque systems of governance and you want to make them transparent. So the solution is transparency and the problem is opaqueness, right?
Yeah.
So basically, both the sides are trying to counter this problem of opaque working of like the government or like uh in lack of transparency. Let's just put it that like in these simple words, that the problem statement here is that there is a lack of transparency in how the politics of a country works or how the democracies operate, which is why to infuse some sense of transparency in it, we are having this debate. I think that's an excellent response from like Khushi in the chat and whoever was also giving their response through verbal means. But any other problems or anybody else who would like to differ and find like a superlative problem than just the lack of transparency? Okay, apparently not many people want to talk about it as of now, which is okay. Working on what I have from you guys, one of you, or at least like some of you are saying that the problem here is that the systems of governance are opaque right now. The solution that we want to this problem is transparency. This means that in doing this, knowingly or unwittingly, you have found what the burden in this debate on both the sides is. On both the sides, the burden is to assure that democracies are effectively functional and are transparent on both the sides. This means that whatever you propose has to ensure the outcome, and the outcome is transparency in the functioning of democracies. All right. How do the two sides then differ? Government and opposition. Government and opposition do not differ in the identification of the problem. Both of you can identify a common problem, which is that governments are not transparent. You can also identify a common solution that lack of transparency needs to be resolved for anything good to happen in a society like that. Where do you differ then? You differ in your approach or in your means of getting to a solution. I might undergo a problem and I have 1,000 different solutions for it. How I differ from the other person in solving the problem is the means that I choose to use to solve that problem. This means that the government here in this case differs from the opposition because they're trying to solve the same problem of lack of transparency through making votes public. Whereas opposition is actually trying to do the same, which is to say, achieve the same outcome, that of making democracies transparent, but by an alternative proposition, which is that votes should not be made public or by extension should remain private. Is that understood, you guys, as to how burden identification happens and where commonalities end? I have something in the chat. This is a way, I mean, you have to be interactive at least to just give me a thumbs up when you think you've understood stuff. So that's extremely important. A thumbs up is really not much to ask for. Yeah, thank you. I see some of you doing it. Others, if you don't understand, ask me questions. If you understand, well and good, just give me a thumbs up so that we can proceed more sure-footedly. Okay, fair enough. So once your burden is identified and you know what the outcome, what is the outcome that you need to ensure is best yielded on your side of the house, then you start building your case. You know that I have to make sure that in every argument that I am bringing up in this particular debate from the government side or the opposition side has to assure transparency. So if I say that the votes need to be made public, I also have to prove that making votes public would lead to better transparency as opposed to getting them to be private. Got it? So how could I say that? Probably that the voting system is rigged and skewed in most of the democracies because of the relentless pursuit of the governments in power to keep the system under control and to ensure that they come back in power. And because most of the seemingly autonomous institutions like the EC or the justice system have probably been seized by conservative governments, we also need to realize the importance of people bringing about a mechanism in which they themselves can hold the democracy to be directly accountable. Which is why when votes are made public, everybody knows who voted in whose favor, which means that rigging of the votes will be called out much more effectively if they are made public as opposed to when they are private. This is one argument. I'm not going to comment on the efficacy of this argument or how easily destructible or not indestructible it is. But the fact that this is an argument and it is trying to pursue the fulfillment of the end goal, which is bringing more transparency in democracies. I am saying votes should be made public. Why should that be a concern in this debate? Because the end goal is transparency. when we make the votes public, a mechanism which is self-reinforcing comes into being, which also cuts down, cuts through the manipulation of the parties or the powers that be who try to like manipulate elections, because now everybody knows the way they voted and like what the demographic preference looks like. So transparency is better in short. How can you guys rebut this statement from the other side though while maintaining the idea of transparency? Can you try doing that? Anybody? Oh, Harsh wants me to elaborate on the burden. I will shortly over again. But just in terms of, can you guys think of a way of just like rebutting this argument that I'm making?
It would create chaos in this society.
You'll have to come again. I'm sorry. It's too, I wasn't clear.
It would create chaos in the society. Political
Chaos.
disappointment,
Okay.
like instability would be there.
Yeah. What makes you think it'll be chaotic? Why can't there be a strategic way through which we ensure that votes are made public through media channels, etc., or whatever? So basically, what you're saying is right. Because I tell you that votes should be made public, but I never tell you how that be done for maximum efficacy, which I'm supposed to, because this is a this house wills motion. I'm supposed to give you a model of sorts, which helps you like understand how this is going to manifest. So your call out is meaningful or rational, but try to make and extend this enough to make an argument from opposition when you're saying that letting votes be private is a better alternative to ensure transparency. Okay, Ankita is saying in a country like India, population is too large for this. All right, I get you. So you're basically saying that it is not feasible for you to make votes public. But let's say that, okay, let's not make it a model debate because you're not familiar with types of motions yet. Let's just say that you have to presume that this can happen effectively, that voting can be made public, and we have a very foolproof mechanism to do that, which means it can be done in an organized way. If that is a given, do you think then it will be effective for voting to be made public? Okay, Kushi says the idea is still vague, as how they will be made public is not being told. Not being told. Even when they are made public, why would public reply on them? There can still be bias hidden. Okay, good. We're coming to something closer to an argument. So somebody is saying, in fact, Khushi is saying that people will not always disclose who they voted in for, right? Because if there is a party which is very, very like powerful in status quo, it's unlikely that I would want to go against that party. I mean, I would want to be very vocal about having gone against that party, which means that voters, like the sanctity of democracy is preserved better when the voter is given a private space to cast their vote and never having to talk about it again. Because I might not want this very big party to come in power. I might want party B, which is smaller, to come into power. But I also don't want to make it public information because I might get backlash. So what Khushi is saying is a relevant counter argument, because she's saying that transparency, even if transparency occurs through what Nitiksha is saying, what is more important right now in democracies is to ensure that individuals are feel safe in casting votes so that they can vote in favor of people who they genuinely vote in the favor of and not out of fear. So transparency is better where people have the agency to vote like they want to because they don't have any fear of backlash. Meaningful argument. Others. Anushka says that voter privacy will be compromised. If votes are made public, then voters will be persecuted for their choices. Yes, exactly the argument I was elaborating on. I think that's a good argument to make. Having transparency will harm the privacy of individuals. Okay. Yeah, sure. Same argument, put differently. And people will lose the sense of personal security. Okay, same argument. Kritika, could you unmute and tell me what you want me to repeat? Sorry, can you come again? I don't quite understand when you put that in the chat. The question. Still unclear. I'd just like you to please put it in the chat. I'll answer it the moment I understand what you're saying. So, moving on, meanwhile, while you're looking at a motion, you're supposed to try finding a burden. A burden is finding out what it is that I have to do in the debate in order to win it. I have to prove that democracies will function more effectively through transparency if votes are made public on government. If I'm on opposition, I have to ensure that votes are made private so that the sanctity of democracy is preserved. On both the sides, the burden is to preserve the sanctity of democracies. The means that you uptake to ensure that are different, which is where you differ as government and opposition. This is what you should perhaps try doing the moment you're given a motion. But it is also after that about asking the right questions to yourself to build on the case that you already have. This means that this motion is relatively simpler. Sometimes you get complicated motions like this house regrets the narrative that so and so should happen. Now, narrative in and of itself is a very vague term because some people confuse it with reality. Narratives are different from reality because the reality might, in reality, democracies might actually happen to be bad, but that's not the narrative you want to run about democracies in among like amidst people, because for democracies to be upheld and preserved, you want to run a narrative which says that democracies have a lot of potential which can be tapped into if you use its provisions actively and effectively. This is a narrative against a reality of corrupt democracies. This means that narratives can sometimes be very different from realities. So paying attention to what the terms in the motion mean and what their positionality is trying to convey is extremely important. This is why, after you have identified your burden in a debate, what you should try doing is find the terms in the motion which might be subjective and how you can define it on your side of the house. For example, in this motion, like in here it might look like every term is clear in terms of what its definition means, but that's not always necessary. I mean, everybody knows what vote refers to in the language given its dictionary definition and our common understanding that vote is the preference of an individual which manifests in some or the other way or form during elections. But what we do not know about voting is what it subjectively means in a democracy. What is the meaning of votes, or what is the significance of a vote in a democracy? This means that different people can have different definitions of what a vote means within a democracy. This is why defining votes in a democracy becomes important when a vote can mean different things to different people. I'll give you an example. Consider this. For me, as a person who lives in a democratic country, voting gives me a sense of agency. That a simpler word for agency should be choice. Choice. It gives me choice, right? So basically, every time I cast a vote, I feel like I am actively making a political choice of having a person rule for the next 5 years. This means that the party who comes in power also came in power because I was a part of the decision making body as the populace. This is also that it gives me agency. For somebody else, by extension, vote might be a sense of empowerment, right? Because it helps you make a decision, it helps you keep the power of some very big actors at bay. Voting is a mechanism through which you can threaten very powerful governments, not threaten, but like get them to regulate their actions for them to be meaningful towards the people who put them in power in the first place. So voting is also a course correcting mechanism. So now I hope this makes it clear that terms can have different subjective interpretations given the context they are put in. For example, if you look at it from the perspective of a senior citizen, a vote might mean just like their ability to get better healthcare by choosing the leaders of the parties that actually promise that. For a young person, voting might be their key to finding meaningful employment because they want to vote for a party which is actually going to assure that. For a child, on the other hand, a vote holds no significance because they don't have neither the right nor the sensibility or the cognitive ability just yet to debunk what a vote means in a democratic setting or just in isolation as well. This means that you should define terms in the motion every time you're given a topic to debate on, because these terms can be skewed by either side for it to mean whatever they want it to mean. And this is important in debates because if somebody calls votes, I mean, if you refer to votes a certain way, then you're also able to make your arguments in that direction. For example, if I want to make the argument that votes should be made public because they in doing that you will not there will be less propensity of rigging elections, then I also have to talk about voting being a mechanism which is the right of people in the country or the sole mechanism through which people get to participate in democracies. So the significance and the importance of voting as a mechanism is exaggerated, not exaggerated, or like underscored by me when I define votes like that. So if the adjudicator did not think about voting as a very crucial exercise within democracies, they will do so now because I have defined it in such a way in order to appeal in order for it to appeal like that. I hope that makes some sense. Please give me like a thumbs up or something if you think whatever I said so far made sense in terms of why definitions are important in debates. Okay, just one, which is really not helpful. Three thumbs up. Three people, 4, 5. I want you guys to either ask me questions or just give me a thumbs up. Just like dangling in between is really not a very clear response. Or being unresponsive, in fact, is not a very clear idea. All right, fair enough. I think we should proceed then. Okay, the second thing that you'll see in the slide is, what does the world look like? Where is this debate happening? These are some questions that you should always ask yourself besides the definition. This is basically what status quo is, which most of you were also talking about. So what does the world look like? As in, status quo is not always about citing a geographical locale within which you can establish a debate. A debate does not always happen in a developing country or a developed country. Sometimes the motion mentions that this debate is happening in Western liberal democracies. This means that this debate is happening in countries like France, the states, etc. In some motions, you are categorically told that this house as India would do something. This means that this debate is happening in India, so the status quo is clear. But in some debates, like the one that you have here, there is no geographical explanation or geographical specificity that you get about the motion as to where this debate is happening. This means that more often than not, you're supposed to find out that where this debate is actually going to be relevant and where you should make this debate happen. So I can say that voting happens only in democratic settings, right? This means that if this debate is happening somewhere, it has to be in a democratic setting. It cannot be outside of that democratic setting, because voting as a concept in and of itself works most effectively, and transparency is something that we can aspire to achieve only in a functional democracies. So this debate is happening in all the functional democracies that probably exist in the world. So this is how I find where this debate can potentially happen. I cannot arbitrarily or meaninglessly define where this debate is happening. For example, I cannot suddenly decide that this debate should happen in Spain or it should happen in Germany without giving adjudicators a reasonable mention for explanation for why I think this debate should happen somewhere. As long as I have an explanation for why this debate is happening in the democracies, like I just gave you, that voting is something that's prevalent in democracies and transparency is aspired to be achieved in democracies, then you can use this as your geographical locale or your status quo. But even that is not enough while you're explaining status quo. You also have to tell me what developing countries look like or what democracies within those countries look like to complete your characterization of status quo. This means that whenever I'm talking about developing countries as the place where this debate is happening, I also need to specify that developing countries have sometimes, or more often than not, have corrupt democracies or functional democracies, however you want to posit it. But you have to give me some nuanced idea of what developing countries look like politically. What is the political ecosystem of most of the developing countries like, and how it can improve from here on by making votes public or some such thing. That's basically status quo. The next thing you ask yourself is, who are the people who get impacted by this debate? Again, not something that people missed in the chat. I think some of you mentioned that stakeholders are important in debates. Stakeholders are just basically people who are a part of this debate. Some stakeholders are the ones that you side with, as in you want the welfare of. For example, mostly the vulnerable groups, the minorities, are the ones who debaters seek to make the help make the condition better off, because these are the people who are most vulnerable and marginalized in society, and they are in like immediate need of upliftment. At the same time, some stakeholders are problematic, like oftentimes industrialists, because they create environmental damage and through their industries and factories running relentlessly without any concern for your environmental problems. So some of the stakeholders will be problematic, some stakeholders will be vulnerable. You will have to strike a balance and say that this stakeholder needs to mind their way, and this stakeholder needs to be benefited in so and so ways. This means that stake identification of stakeholder does not just end by you saying that, oh, these are the stakeholders who are relevant to the debate, but you also need to explain how each of these stakeholders are related to each other. So how is the industrialist related to this vulnerable person who probably lives in a slum and has to like bear all the carbon emissions that comes from a nearby factory? And who do you support and why? And how do you think the industrialist can change? So you have to explore the stakeholders in terms of who is creating the problem. How can we get them to change their approach? Why would them changing their approach help? Why should the minorities be advantaged, etc., etc.? So those are the questions that you probably want to answer from your side of the house. But the last question that you want to seek response for is also, what will the other side say? As in, if I am making a case about how voting should be made public because rigging of elections will not happen, then what can the other side say to that? When I think like that, I am able to like rebut them even before they've said something. Which means that when I preempt something, preempt means thinking about what the other side is going to say beforehand during case prep. I am also in a better position to deal with their case because I had already anticipated some of their arguments in advance. You will not be able to anticipate all the arguments, but just trying to find some arguments helps in general in making an like a balanced case from your side and like having rebuttals ready beforehand. All right. I think then what we should discuss is this. Again, interactive. Please try speaking up. I don't quite know why this a lot of you are unwilling to just participate. Like I said, this is no competition. It's okay for you to not give the right answer because there is literally no objectively right answer here. So let me just put a motion in the chat, and I want you all to come up with one argument and just probably try explaining it to the, I mean, in the way that I defined earlier, like try to give me a definition of the terms and the stakeholders and what is your argument and what it intends to do. I'm just giving you the motion.
Could I ask one question?
Yes, questions meanwhile.
Yeah. So there are the term constructive that are being presented in the debate. So it the argument building that is basically given a fancy name constructives, like argument we present for the motion or against the motion.
So what is the word that you are inquiring about?
Constructives.
Oh yeah.
Constructive.
Yes, definitely. I think in debates there's just like a lot of jargons which can very which can be simplified to a very large extent. Constructive happens to be one such word. So constructive is just like basic arguments. You
Okay,
make a
okay, got it.
claim, you analyze it by talking about the stakeholders, status quo, how they interact, and then you probably end up giving an example. That's an entire argument, which can also be called a constructive.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, no questions. So there's a motion in the chat. Please try responding to this. It isn't very tough. This house regrets the concept of gifting. Gifting as in gifting and like giving something of material worth to somebody as a token of affection. So like you gift your parents a car when you grow up, or like get them an anniversary present. All of that comes within the ambit of this debate. You have to, if you are going from the government side, you have to regret the idea. You have to say that the gifting is a bad concept in the society. And if you oppose it, you have to say that no, gifting is actually a good concept. There's nothing regrettable about it. I'll give you not more than 2 minutes. Please start coming up with arguments. You can also put them in the chat, but I prefer it that I mean I would prefer you guys unmuting yourself because that's just more interactive.
Could I present?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Basically, the as you said, the gifting is basically the token of gift or a token of affection, basically that is being presented to someone as in accordance with the love and affection we show to someone. But talking about the status quo and in this materialistic world, the this whole narrative has been painted and has been coated with the materialistic things and feeling that both the side feels, and it is the means of projecting someone's wealth and someone's affluency, basically. So thus talking about the stakeholders, like the person that presents the gift and the person that is getting the gift. So uh, the main argument that can be built on there, that what's the main basic driving force when we present a gift to someone? It's the it's the a feeling or that the affection we hold in our heart and that we want to convey to someone. But there are several ways through which we can provide it to someone. Like there can be a moral support, there can be a financial help in the problems of that person, and it can be the moral and the hand by hand support to someone. Gifting someone with the materialistic things won't work, as it would project the projection of affluency and this material, and this essence of assisting someone or showing the love and affection can't be painted or can't be shown with the materialistic things and values.
Okay, excellent attempt. Like really nice attempt.
Can I
Um,
present?
yes, please. Is it a different argument or is it an extension of the argument?
You can say an extension of the argument.
Okay, so we'll add to the analysis. That's good. Please proceed.
Like gifting has become a parcel in the status quo. Gifting can be anything from a small Barbie girl to a big Mercedes car. I want to say that when we say that gifting is a token of affection, is that these materialistic thoughts have sidelined the emotional support one should give. Like when we say that a big boy who has a very good package and is gifting a car, a Mercedes car to their or a house to their parents. But in that case, we can also think that the old age parents who at that time did not want a Mercedes cars, but the support that but the moral support that the child should give, who is living in America but is unable to give that support in their older age, and is running away from his duty just by gifting these materialistic things.
Again, that's a really nice like analysis. This is also a theoretical concept. It's called absent presence. So, I mean, that's a really nice thing because it actually exists as a theory which you were able to come up with by your like own. I bet you don't know about this theory because this is taught to like mostly people of philosophy and literary backgrounds. So this is the concept of absent presence, wherein you try to make up for your absence through a present, right? So this is good in some situations where the person cannot be around because they have probably like unfortunately passed away or some such thing. But now it's becoming a trend because people abdicate from their responsibilities. They choose to expend a lot of their time over like doing overtime in their workplaces and thereby not making it to their children's birthday parties or like to their parents wedding anniversaries and stuff like that. So again, excellent analysis on the same argument. Anybody else who wants to like add to the same argument or perhaps give a counter argument? I'd love to hear like a counter argument to what has already been discussed because this is pretty solid. Nobody? Oh,
One
something.
argument I would like to present through example.
Yes, please.
Like say if someone says ki that a father is presenting a token of gift to his child, like he has gifted like toy car, whatever else, so whatever it is. So I think there would be a sense of a demand, or there would be a sense of expectation that shouldn't be there from the child. Like the sense of expectation is get built there. So I think that is the negative part of gifting.
Okay, yes, excellent. So this is also about okay, somebody giving you a gift, and the next time you go to their birthday party, you have this obligation of doing just as well as they did, so as to make them feel good about it. So that this is just pressure building at the end of the day, and there is no quality in the relationship that you have, which is solely like hinged on the practice of gifting. That's another good argument. Now that you guys have given like a plethora of arguments from the same side, which is opposing the idea of gifting, could somebody now be courageous enough to just oppose it against all of these arguments that have been made so far?
Yeah, I would like to state an instance. Could I?
Yes, please.
See,
Keep
if
your
a
hands raised. I'll yeah, acknowledge. Okay.
okay. If a person is, if a child is studying in a one of the standard and he has stopped in the class, and for the token of affection and the sense of dignity that has to be maintained, his father has gifted him a bicycle. So what's the wrong in gifting in? Like he has been motivated by his father and he has been presented with a token of appreciation basically. So what's the wrong in it? Like somewhere else it would let him benefited by it. Like bicycle is good for health, and any gift that is being presented by the father is the sense of motivation and the sense of respect, sense of love is being presented, no sense of materialistic thing, and the feeling of materialism is being projected here.
All right. Okay. So you're basically saying parents give their children as reward and punishment mechanism as part of the reward and punishment mechanism, basically. And this helps them grow. So what's the harm? Okay, anybody who wants to rebut that? Okay, Harsh, we had Harsh who wanted to add. Yes, please.
Like when we talk about the current world and the idea of gifting, we have to think that the today's world, the people are suffering from depression, disease like depressions and all. And when like a person who is suffering from depression and the other person who gives him anything, he we have to first think about what a depressed person look like the person feels detached from the world. And in that case, when a person gives a gift or any affection or token of affection to him, he feels that someone is there who thinks about him. And it acts like it's therapeutic when the gift acts like a therapy to that person.
Okay, so you're basically saying that gifts can also hold therapeutic value and that materialism doesn't necessarily take away from the like the euphoria that it can bring to a person. But for this, you require a little more analysis to prove why material aspect will not overtake the emotional aspect. So you can probably say that, look, my gift need not be so much about the money, when because it need not always be like horrendously expensive. It can also be like personalized. I buy
Yeah.
something material, but I personalize it. For example, I buy you a book and I like write commentary on it, or like I read it myself and I highlight the portions that I think you're going to like. In which case, I'm also making that extra effort. Which means gifting in and of itself as an activity cannot be loathed, because it can be personalized according to the individual who you're gifting it to just imbue it with emotional relevance, like significance as well. So I think that's a good way of going about things. But the only difference is that all of your arguments are meaningful. I think on the side where you're supporting gifting, it needs to be analyzed just as well as you have analyzed it on the other side. So basically, through this activity, what I aspired to make clear in like to whatever effect I can make it clear within an hour is that an argument does not just stand by itself, and it does not hold water by itself. It has to be made relevant through what you're saying and how you're explaining stuff. So you have to break it down as if you're explaining the concept to a 5-year-old, and you have to give all the nuances within which the practice of gifting can exist for the adjudicator to buy your claims. For example, all of this analysis that we have about why gifting is bad is good because it has layers and layers of reasons for why some argument should not work, like why gifting should not happen. So always remember this. No argument is a good argument if it doesn't have like substantial analysis or layers of explanations for why, if something happens, it's the right thing to happen or the wrong thing to happen. In the analysis, then you also need to compare. For example, somebody really, I think it was Palak, who really went ahead and said that, look, gifting is not the best way of showing affection, because alternatively, you can do it through acts of service or be emotional availability. This means that when you are emotionally unavailable through gifts, it's bad. But when you don't do gifting, then you try to keep the person happy through alternative means, like just complimenting them every time they're in and around, right? So if you want to reward your child, it doesn't always have to be with like a fancy car or like chocolates that they want. It can also be just like complimenting them for the good grades they get. So that will create the same kind of influence, but without the material attachment and without the expectation of a better and a more expensive gift next time. Relationships can still be sustained. So analysis is supposed to like involve what the other side might say and what a better alternative to that is, which like some of you did, but also the downside of gifting and then the upside of alternatives. So it's like a very comprehensive case that you're running. You're not leaving behind anything upon which you might be asked a question. So analysis is very important besides stakeholder status quo and definition of the terms. So I think today in terms of fundamentals, we should probably just uh, stop here, because again, there's a lot that you can do in terms of getting deeper into how analysis can be made better. There's a lot of, again, profound terms like mechanization, impacting, weighing, which you will see people use around you if you like just get yourself in the debating circuits, whichever is the most proximate to you. But these are things that take some time in like being understood because they are slightly complex. So as long as I can make, I mean, as long as I have given you some foothold to build your knowledge on, I'd rest satisfied. Harsh, yes, your question, please.
Like, sir, if like in this motion only, if we feel that a motion is slightly inclined towards the either house, then what should be the approach in that case?
Mostly the motions are balanced, which means that it's not like it's government heavy or opposition heavy. You will get the kind of motions which are debatable from both the sides, because people who are setting the motions know that there has to be a debate on this and it's competitive and like it can't be tilted more towards one side. But even if you feel like it, I think there's arguments to find from all the sides. Even if you can't make your own arguments, as long as you deconstruct the other side's arguments, which is called running a negative case, that can also get you to win debate sometimes if it's really needed.
Like, sir, in this motion, what can be the best argument for the government side?
There's no such thing as a best argument. So basically, when you regret gifting, this argument was a good one, that materialistic aspects overcome like the emotional aspects, which means that even when you gift, you don't even think about gifting. You just probably go to Archie's, and Archie's already knows the kind of gift that you should give on Father's Day, Mother's Day. People don't even think about the kind of gift that they should be giving, because companies tell you what gift to give, right? So every time there is some festival celebrations, and like this Cadbury ad is everywhere. That's how people get you to decide what you should gift. You don't even get to decide that. This is another reason or metric for why you can regret gifting, because it's all standardized. It's not even like our effort anymore. So any argument is a good argument as long as you can analyze it well enough. No argument is intrinsically good or bad, I believe. It's just the analysis that makes it good or bad. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, sir. Cool.
Yeah.
Another question?
Yeah. We will be conducting more sessions on the same law, right? In the upcoming stage.
Yeah, we could definitely look forward to more of these sessions. We, in fact, at Ideal do that for like people in your category, as in high schoolers. So basically, this is another thing that I wanted to probably talk about at length. This is about just debating and how a lot of people aspire to do well in debates at school level. But this kind of debating, which is rigorous, is only made accessible at university level. It was the same with me. I only learned anything about debating after I got into university. That's something that Ideal is trying to change actively by making it accessible to school people. So right now what's happening is that University of Delhi always releases these seats for ECA kids who can get through like the programs that the University of Delhi has through ECA category, as in if you have enough achievements in debating and you can just upload them on the registration portal, you will eventually get points for it. And if your points are decent enough, you get a college through ECA, even if your percentage from like CUET or whatever you give these days wasn't good enough. This means that so we can also help with that. Basically, the process is simple, but you need to build your profile from early on, which is what Ideal helps with again. So all the, like I told you about national tournaments that we keep holding, it's particularly for that reason, because India does not have enough of those tournaments, and it's not always okay for us to expect that everybody will directly go to international tournaments. So we hope to bridge that gap and get people more platforms so that they can participate and get credentials and thereby get admissions into TU. Because TU, like, or any other university for that matter, even Ambedkar, which I applied to long back for ECA, gives more credibility to national certificates or national level competitions than inter-school. So we are trying to make that possible through holding national events. And Frankenstein is one such event that is about to happen in May. Registrations for which are open. I think we'll talk more about that. Kamal sir will talk more about that now.
Could you
Over to
please
you.
name it? Like, could you
Yeah.
please
We're sharing all of the information. Yes.
could you please share the information in the group, like upcoming competition at national level of debating?
Yeah, for sure. We'll be doing that. We'll keep you posted. But even right now for Frankenstein, Kamal sir, could you please?
Sure, I will share. So, thanks a lot, Nitiksha, for the session. I hope it will help you a lot, even to start and showcase your debating skills. So, one is our Instagram channel where we update all our upcoming debates. So, you can go and follow Indian Debating League, where we A conducts national tournaments, B select the Indian team for international tournaments, whether it's Stanford, Oxford, Harvard, whatever you name, we send them. And then we run some training programs as we are running this one along with the SRCC. Now coming to the recent opportunity that you have all is the Frankenstein debating tournament, and you all mostly fits into the senior category, which is 10 to 12th. And we have as part of the program itself that you will be getting trained on the format, on the theme, and on the art of debating from 4 to 6 at 7 p.m. And then we have qualifiers on 7th of May, where you will debate 3 matches across teams from India. And if you do well, the ultimately will have finale at 13th of May at ID Delhi. And if you do well even over there, then we will take you to the London School of Economics debate and also make you part of the G20 summit that will be hosting in July. So this is a wonderful opportunity for you to debate, and the theme is exciting. You will again find a lot about the themes on our social media channel, but also more importantly, we have SDG as a theme, as a broader theme that you have some smaller themes under that, which again is a topic which is a very quite importance in terms of the conversation that happening along the universities or the mass media, and this is something that we need to understand, we need to solve together. So this is a debate, I guess, which will make you learn a lot about format, about what is the status quo in terms of how, what is the national level of debaters which will come. And also the theme itself is quite interesting. You will have the best adjudicator will give you the feedback on each and every round, each and every speech that you deliver, you will get the feedback. And what we will do immediately after that, we will give you a, because we have a special sort of linkage for SRCC, workshop student attendees. We will put a link on your WhatsApp group to register for this. If you have a team of 3 members, you register with the team. If you don't have a team, you register individually. Just write NA in the form. And yeah, I think that you will enjoy debating with us in terms of Frankenstein, and likely going to represent India at the international level in the coming months and coming years. If you have any question related to Frankenstein, you can stay. Otherwise, we are done for today.
Hello, if we like register individually, will we get team up with someone